So back in 1995, there was this really fascinating linguistic study. They were basically observing how strangers perceived each other in professional environments.
Oh, right. The one about perceived intelligence.
Exactly. And the researchers found that if you remove just one specific word from a speaker's vocabulary, the people listening to them suddenly perceive that speaker as, like, significantly more intelligent.
It's wild, honestly.
Yeah, vastly more confident, more precise, just from dropping one word. So today, in our deep dive, we are basically putting that word on trial.
I love that. We're prosecuting it.
We are. We're looking at your English vocabulary, specifically how you describe the world around you, because we want to hand you this massive palette of new colors to work with.
Which is so important for fluency.
Right, because if you're relying on this single flat crutch word all the time, you're essentially trying to paint a vibrant sunset over the ocean using exactly one tube of gray paint.
That is a perfect analogy.
I mean, you might get the shapes right, but you're completely missing the depth.
Yeah, it's a purely functional way of speaking. Like, it gets the basic facts across, but it doesn't make the listener feel anything.
Right.
And it certainly doesn't project, mastery of the language. So the culprit we're talking about here is the intensifier very.
The dreaded very.
The dreaded very. But I do want to establish something immediately, because I know a lot of language learners panic when they hear this.
Oh, for sure.
Using the word very is not grammatically incorrect.
Yep.
Okay, like if you say you're very tired or a building is very big, you are successfully communicating a fact.
You're not breaking any laws.
Exactly. But as you transition from, say, an intermediate speaker, like a B1 or B2 level, into an advanced C1 level communicator, native speakers just naturally gravitate toward stronger, highly specific adjectives.
I want to dig into the mechanics of that, actually. Like, why does native English naturally push very out of the nest as we get more fluent? What's happening in the listener's brain when they hear someone use very over and over again?
Well, it fundamentally comes down to economy of language.
Yeah.
And cognitive load.
Okay, unpack that for me.
Sure. So when you use very plus an adjective, you're forcing two words to do the job of one. You're diluting the impact.
I see.
But more importantly, it creates this repetitive drone. If everything in your presentation is very good, very bad, very big, very small.
The listener just glazes over.
Exactly. The brain actually starts to tune out the intensifier entirely. It literally just becomes white noise.
Wow.
Yeah. So the core thesis of replacing very is that it does three things. It eliminates that repetitive phrasing. It instantly elevates your perceived fluency. And it commands authority.
Commands authority. That makes so much sense. Because whether you're, ordering a coffee or presenting a quarterly report in a corporate boardroom, precise language projects confidence.
Because it shows you aren't searching for the right word. You already possess it.
Yes. I see this all the time in meetings, actually. The person who says a project is crucial immediately commands the room differently than the person who just says it's very important.
Oh, absolutely. It's like upgrading your wardrobe, but for your vocabulary.
I love that. Upgrading your verbal wardrobe. So if we're going to rebuild this vocabulary and swap out that gray paint for vivid colors, it makes sense to start with the most immediate, tangible things we experience.
Right. Physical world.
The physical world around us. Let's look at how we measure physical space, speed, and temperature.
The physical environment is the perfect foundation because, human beings exist in space, and we constantly need to measure it and communicate those measurements to others for survival, cooperation, everything.
Right. So let's start with pure size. Instead of saying something is very big, we have a spectrum of options.
We do. Three of the most common are huge, enormous, and massive.
Okay, so are those three truly interchangeable? Because to my ear, they feel kind of distinct. Like if I call a house huge versus calling a house massive, I feel like I'm describing two totally different types of architecture.
You're totally picking up on the semantic nuance there. Huge and enormous are largely interchangeable in everyday speech. Like a balloon can be huge, a financial debt can be enormous. But massive operates differently.
How so?
If you look at the etymology, the root of the word is mass.
Oh, like physical mass.
Exactly. It inherently implies physical weight, density, solidity, and gravity. So a concrete pillar is massive. A mountain is massive.
Right.
You wouldn't typically look at a giant, delicate hot air balloon and call it massive because it's light and it's filled with air. It lacks the density the word implies.
So that distinction completely changes how I visualize the word. Massive has actual gravity to it.
It does.
So what about the other side of the physical spectrum, describing things that are very small?
For very small, the universally understood, highly efficient replacement is tiny.
Tiny.
Yeah, it's punchy, it's quick to say, and it completely eliminates the need for an intensifier. Like, the text on this contract is tiny. It does the job of 2 words and 2 syllables.
Tiny text. Perfect.
Nah.
Now, let's inject some motion into this physical space. Speed, we have very fast and very slow. The upgrades you brought for us are rapid and quick for fast and sluggish for slow. Let's start with rapid versus quick, because I use quick all the time. But rapid sounds a bit like, I don't know, I'm reading a scientific journal or a financial report.
Well, that is entirely about the register, the level of formality and the context in which a word is socially acceptable.
Okay, break that down.
So quick is your everyday, highly functional speed. Let's grab a quick lunch. She gave a quick reply to my email. It's practical. It's colloquial.
Yeah, that feels natural.
But rapid actually shares roots with the Latin word rapidus, meaning to snatch or carry away quickly.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And in modern English, it feels much more formal. It's almost exclusively applied to abstract concepts, systems, growth, or change over time.
Like rapid economic growth.
Exactly. You'd say the tech industry experienced rapid growth, or there was a rapid decline in the stock market. If you turn to a friend and say, hey, let's grab a rapid lunch.
They're going to look at you like you're a robot.
Exactly. You're going to get a very strange look.
Are you ready for a rapid lunch?
Yeah, that sounds awful. But let's look at very slow, because the replacement word here is sluggish. And this is where language gets incredibly interesting to me from a sensory perspective.
Oh, the phonesthetics.
Yes, sluggish sounds exactly like what it means. It physically evokes a garden slug.
Moving slowly, leaving a sticky trail.
Yeah, through wet mud. The word just sounds heavy in your mouth. Sluggish.
What you're describing is, sound symbolism. It's the idea that the vocal sounds we use to build a word often mirror its meaning.
It's so cool.
The English language has this whole cluster of words starting with the L sound that relate to friction, wetness, or downward motion.
Like slip, slide.
Yeah, sludge, slime, slop, slug. And when you add that heavy, dragging ish to the end, the phonetics of the word actively recreate the feeling of slow, sticky resistance.
Sluggish.
So when a financial analyst says the economy is sluggish, or a commuter says traffic on the highway is sluggish, they aren't just giving you a speed.
They're giving you a feeling. Exactly. They're invoking the physical imagery of trying to move through mud.
I just love when the mechanics of the mouth match the meaning of the word. Okay, let's move to our next physical category, which is temperature.
Right.
The replacements for very hot are boiling and scorching, and the replacement for very cold is freezing.
Yes.
Now, I have to push back on this a little bit.
Uh-oh. Okay.
Because if I walk into an office building in July and tell my coworkers it is boiling outside, or if I walk in during January and say I am freezing, they know I don't literally mean the ambient temperature is 100 degrees Celsius or 0 degrees.
Right. Obviously not.
So from a strictly logical standpoint, aren't we just lying when we use these words?
You aren't lying. You're engaging in hyperbole.
Extreme exaggeration.
Exactly. Extreme exaggeration used for rhetorical effect. It is a fundamental, almost mandatory feature of native English expression.
Mandatory, really?
Pretty much. Human beings don't just objectively measure temperature like thermometers. We experience temperature through the lens of physical comfort or, discomfort.
That's true.
We constantly use hyperbole to communicate our emotional reaction to the physical fact. When you say it's freezing in the office, you're basically telling a shared cultural joke.
Like an inside joke about the AC.
Yeah. It's the universal, agreed-upon complaint for any chilly breeze that makes you want to put on a sweater.
It's about the feeling, not the weather data.
Precisely. And if we look at boiling versus scorching, we can see just how specific that sensory feeling gets.
How do you mean?
Well, boiling implies intense heat combined with high humidity. It evokes a pot of water. You're sweating, the air is thick, you feel like you're literally cooking a liquid.
Oh, like a swamp?
Yes. Scorching, on the other hand, comes from the idea of burning the surface of something. It implies a painful, blinding, dry heat.
So it scorches the earth.
Exactly. It burns your skin.
That makes perfect sense. So if I'm in a humid, sticky jungle, I am boiling. But if I'm in the middle of the desert, I am scorching.
You've got it perfectly.
So we've established how to navigate the external physical environment, the size, the speed, the temperature. But humans don't just exist passively in the world, we react to it.
We have internal lives.
Exactly. Which brings us to the inner landscape. How do these external environments and situations make us feel physically and emotionally?
Describing our internal state with precision is just so essential for human connection, empathy, and even professional communication.
So let's start with the core human emotions. Instead of very happy, we have delighted and thrilled.
Yep.
Instead of very sad, we have miserable and heartbroken. For very angry, the upgrade is furious, and for very scared, the word is terrified.
Let's dissect very happy first. Delighted versus thrilled.
Yeah, I feel like delighted has a really specific social weight to it. It almost sounds, I don't know, aristocratic.
It does. It carries a highly polite, socially regulated pleasure. It's the ultimate word for business etiquette or formal social settings.
Oh, for sure.
If you're introduced to a new client, you say, "I'm delighted to meet you." If your team receives an industry award, you say, "We are delighted to accept this."
It's a very composed.
Extremely composed. It expresses happiness while fiercely maintaining professional composure.
Yeah.
You're happy, but you're still in control.
Whereas thrilled sounds like you're actively losing control a bit.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Thrilled is a visceral, vibrating, energetic burst of joy. The origin of the word thrill actually relates to piercing or penetrating. It's an emotion that suddenly pierces through you.
Wow.
I am thrilled we got front row tickets to the concert. It implies an elevated heart rate. You would never say you were thrilled to meet a new vendor.
Unless you were demonstrating an incredibly bizarre level of excitement about, like, office supplies.
Right. I can just imagine someone shaking a vendor's hand and yelling, "I am thrilled to buy these printer cartridges."
It completely breaks the social contract.
It really does.
Okay, let's look at the sad spectrum. We have miserable versus heartbroken. How do we divide those?
The division really lies in the permanence and depth of the emotional weight.
Okay.
Heartbroken is reserved for profound, often permanent emotional loss. A romantic breakup, the death of a loved one, a massive life disappointment.
The imagery is literal. Your core emotional center is broken.
Yes. Miserable, however, is vastly more adaptable. It means extremely unhappy or deeply uncomfortable, but it very frequently applies to temporary physical states or external annoyances.
Give me an example.
Well, you can be heartbroken over a divorce, but you are miserable when you're sitting in a middle seat on a 12-hour flight with a bad cold.
Yes, you aren't heartbroken about the middle seat. You are just utterly stripped of your comfort. You're miserable.
Exactly. Now let's talk about the intense, volatile emotions. Furious for very angry and terrified for very scared.
Right.
These are peak intensity words, and they really should be used sparingly, only when the emotion genuinely warrants it.
Because otherwise you sound dramatic.
Exactly. If a barista gets your coffee order wrong, you aren't furious. You're slightly annoyed.
Hopefully.
Right. But if a hacker steals your identity and drains your bank account, you are furious. The anger is consuming.
And terrified.
Terrified shares that peak intensity. It goes beyond fear. Fear makes you cautious. Terror paralyzes you.
Let's pivot slightly from pure emotion to internal physical states. Specifically, very tired and very hungry.
Oh, these are great.
The replacements here are exhausted and starving. I actually want to bring up a real-world scenario here with you.
Let's hear it.
Let's say I am at a high-stakes business lunch. I'm with my CEO, maybe a prospective client. We've been reviewing documents for 3 hours, and we are finally waiting for the food to arrive. Is it socially acceptable for me to turn to the CEO and say, "I am starving"?
I would strongly advise against it.
Really? Even casually?
Just like the hyperbole we discussed with the weather, starving is a highly informal, dramatic exaggeration. In formal contexts, or with people you don't know intimately, it's better to maintain professional distance and emotional regulation. You'd simply say, "I'm quite hungry," or "I'm certainly looking forward to lunch."
So when do I use starving?
The word starving should be reserved for when you walk in the front door of your own home, drop your briefcase, and yell to your family, "What's for dinner? I'm starving."
It implies a level of domestic intimacy.
Exactly. Keep the drama out of the boardroom.
Keep the drama out of the boardroom. That makes total sense. Now, for very tired, the replacement is exhausted. I actually have a technology analogy for this that I rely on heavily.
Oh, I'd love to hear it.
When you are very tired, your internal battery is at about 5%. You're desperately looking for a charger, you're lowering the screen brightness on your brain to survive the next hour, but you are still functioning.
Barely, but functioning.
Right. When you are exhausted, that means the phone has completely shut down, the screen is black, it won't even show you the low battery icon anymore, the hardware is unresponsive.
That is brilliant. And if we take that analogy further, it aligns perfectly with the etymology of the word.
Really?
Yeah, exhausted literally means that all of your internal resources have been drawn out or consumed. Think of the exhaust pipe of a car.
Oh, it pushes out the spent fumes.
Exactly. It pushes out the spent, useless air after the fuel has been burned. When a human being is exhausted, the fuel is gone. There is nothing left in the tank to draw from.
It's a total systemic shutdown.
Absolutely.
I just love looking at how native speakers weave these internal states into casual conversation. Rather than just reciting a list of words, let me share a quick story of how this actually sounded in the wild.
Please do.
So I was catching up with a friend last Friday. She had just survived a brutal week at a marketing firm. If she were speaking at, say, a B1 intermediate level, she might have said, "I am very tired. My boss made me work very hard, and I was very angry when they changed the deadline. But the project is done, so I am very happy."
Right. It gets the point across. It's functional.
Functional. But what she actually said was, "I am completely exhausted. I was absolutely furious when they moved the deadline without telling us. But we pulled it off, and I am thrilled to have my weekend back."
Notice how the emotional landscape completely shifts in that second version.
It is night and day.
By using exhausted, furious, and thrilled, the conversation instantly gains texture. Sounds like a real human being venting genuine frustration and relief.
The flat gray paint is gone. You can actually feel the stakes of her week.
Exactly. And that leads us to a broader concept, I think. Our internal emotions and physical states directly dictate how we judge everything around us.
We're constantly evaluating the world.
Every single day, our brains are running this background algorithm. Is this good? Is this bad? Is this hard? Is this important?
Which brings us to evaluating quality, difficulty, and importance.
Evaluation is perhaps the most common function of daily speech. Let's start with quality. We have very good and very bad. The upgrades for very good are excellent, amazing, and outstanding. The upgrades for very bad are awful, terrible, and dreadful. Let's look at the negative side first. Awful, terrible, dreadful. Do you perceive a difference between them?
Well, awful and terrible feel like everyday workhorses. Like, I had a terrible commute, that was an awful meeting.
Yeah.
But dreadful feels theatrical.
Yes.
It feels slightly British, maybe, like someone wearing a velvet smoking jacket saying, "The opera was simply dreadful, darling."
You have isolated the tone perfectly.
Yeah.
Awful and terrible carry equal universal weight in American and British English. But dreadful does have an aristocratic theatrical flair.
It's so dramatic.
It is. It implies a deep, lingering distaste. The root word is dread, which means great fear or apprehension. While you can certainly use it in modern standard English, it elevates the formality and adds a layer of dramatic suffering that awful simply lacks.
Okay, let's flip to the positive side. Very good becomes excellent, amazing, or outstanding. I want to talk about amazing because I feel like this word is everywhere.
Oh, it really is.
This coffee is amazing. That email you sent was amazing. My new socks are amazing. Has the word just lost its meaning?
Yes.
Right.
What you are observing is a linguistic phenomenon known as semantic bleaching.
Semantic bleach.
Right. It happens when a word is used so frequently and in such trivial contexts that it is completely drained of its original power.
Like bleach washing out the color.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Historically, amazing meant to cause profound wonder, astonishment, or even religious awe. It was reserved for miracles or grand spectacles.
And now it's used for socks.
Now it's used for socks. Today, through semantic bleaching, it just means, I like this. It is highly common in casual speech. But because it's been so diluted, it lacks professional weight.
So if amazing is bleached, what do we use when we want to sound authoritative and genuinely praise something?
You rely on excellent and outstanding. Excellent implies a high degree of merit, but outstanding is the true power word. Physically, the word means to stand out from the rest of the group. If you tell an employee, your work on this report was outstanding, you aren't just saying it was good, you're saying it stood head and shoulders above the competition. It is a benchmark of quality.
That is a crucial distinction for managers or anyone doing performance reviews.
Definitely.
Now let's talk about evaluating difficulty. Very easy becomes effortless or simple. Very difficult becomes challenging or tough. I have a massive pet peeve regarding the word challenging.
Let's hear it.
It feels to me like challenging is just a psychological manipulation tactic invented by corporate PR departments.
Oh, you're not entirely wrong.
Right. If management stands up and says, this upcoming software migration is going to be very difficult, the entire team groans, morale drops.
Yeah.
But if they say, this migration is going to be a challenging opportunity, suddenly everyone is supposed to feel energized. It's the exact same problem, just spun differently.
You are absolutely right about the sociology of management speak. The words we choose frame the reality we experience. Difficult focuses entirely on the hardship, the roadblock, the pain of the process.
It's purely negative.
Right. A challenge, however, invokes the psychology of a game or a sport. It's a test of skill that can be overcome. It invites active participation rather than passive suffering.
So it's deliberate verbal camouflage.
Exactly. Replacing difficult with challenging is a deliberate framing technique used in leadership to reframe a negative reality into an active, surmountable task.
Okay, what about the opposite? Very easy. We have effortless and simple.
Effortless is arguably the highest compliment you can pay to someone possessing a specialized skill.
Really?
Oh, absolutely. If you watch an Olympic gymnast on the rings or a Michelin star chef chopping vegetables, what they're doing is incredibly difficult.
Wow.
But they possess such an extreme level of mastery that they hide the labor. They make it look effortless.
It appears as though it requires no physical or mental exertion at all.
Right. It's the illusion of magic.
But what about simple? Because I feel like simple can be a trap.
Simple is a highly dangerous word in professional environments.
Dangerous? How?
While its dictionary definition just means not complicated, it carries a heavy, negative secondary connotation of lacking intelligence, sophistication, or depth.
Oh, I see.
If a colleague presents a strategy they spent weeks developing and you say this is a simple plan, they're likely to be deeply offended. You're essentially calling their work primitive.
That is a massive minefield. If I can't say a plan is very simple, what's the alternative that doesn't insult my coworkers?
You use the word straightforward.
Straightforward.
This is one of the most useful vocabulary upgrades you can make. Straightforward implies clarity, honesty, and ease of execution without implying a lack of intelligence.
So it's actually a compliment.
It is. If you say the new onboarding process is straightforward, you are complimenting its elegant design. It means the path forward is clear and free of unnecessary detours.
I am writing that down right now. Never call a coworker's idea simple. Call it straightforward.
Good rule to live by.
Let's finish the evaluation category with evaluating importance. Very important becomes crucial or essential, and very careful becomes cautious. Crucial just sounds inherently serious.
It sounds serious because of its etymological roots.
Yeah.
Crucial shares a root with crux or cross. Historically, it referred to a crossroads, a point where a definitive decision must be made, and the path you choose changes everything.
Oh, wow.
When you tell a team member that a deadline is crucial, you are telling them that they are at a crossroads. The success or failure of the entire endeavor hinges on this single point.
The stakes are infinitely higher. What about essential?
Essential works similarly. It relates to the essence of a thing. A car can run without a radio, but it cannot run without an engine. The engine is essential to its very being.
That makes perfect sense. So we've evaluated abstract concepts like difficulty and importance. But human beings are inherently materialistic, right?
We are.
We surround ourselves with physical objects, property, status markers. This brings us to how we judge the material world. Aesthetics, age, wealth, and cleanliness.
Evaluating the material world requires language that conveys immediate visual and social judgments. Let's start with aesthetics, how things look. Very beautiful becomes gorgeous or stunning. Very ugly becomes hideous.
I have to pause on hideous because, to me, calling something hideous isn't just saying it doesn't look nice. It feels like an act of verbal violence. It is an incredibly mean word.
It is brutal. And again, the history of the word explains why. Hideous comes from an old French word meaning terror or fright.
Terror.
Yes. It doesn't just mean something is unappealing. It means it is so profoundly ugly that it provokes a physical reaction of horror or revulsion.
That is intense.
I caution learners to use it with extreme care. It's generally acceptable to use it hyperbolically for inanimate objects like that orange velvet couch is hideous, or the architecture of that building is hideous.
But not a person.
Never a person.
Yeah.
Using it to describe a living person is profoundly cruel and essentially unacceptable in polite society.
Good rule of thumb. Reserve hideous for furniture, not people.
Exactly.
On the positive side, we have gorgeous and stunning. I find stunning fascinating because it shares linguistic DNA with weapons, like a stun gun.
You're spot on. The literal meaning of stun is to knock someone unconscious or leave them dizzy and reeling from a physical blow.
Right.
When you call a landscape, a piece of art, or a person stunning, you are saying their beauty is so intense that it acts as a physical blow.
Yeah.
It stops you in your tracks. It momentarily shuts down your higher reasoning.
That is a massive upgrade from very beautiful.
It really is.
Now let's look at how we maintain our material world. Cleanliness. Very clean becomes spotless. Very dirty becomes filthy.
These words operate as absolute extremes, much like the word silent. Spotless is entirely literal. It means a surface exists without a single microscopic spot of dirt or blemish. It implies perfection.
And filthy. That word gives me a visceral reaction. When I say my car is dirty, it means I need to take it to the car wash this weekend. When I say a public restroom is filthy, it implies I need a biohazard suit.
Exactly.
It makes you physically crinkle your nose just pronouncing it. Filthy.
Filthy evokes grime, disease, contamination, and deep, prolonged neglect. You wouldn't say, my hands are filthy just because you got a little flour on them while baking bread.
Right, that's just messy.
You'd use filthy if you had spent 12 hours digging in a muddy, oily trench. It implies a level of dirt that is almost morally offensive.
Wow. Let's talk about age and wealth. Things that track value over long periods of time. Very old becomes ancient, very new becomes brand new for wealth. Very rich becomes wealthy, and very poor becomes broke. The distinction between wealthy and broke is fascinating to me because of the heavy socioeconomic undertones. They aren't just descriptions of bank accounts, they're descriptions of class.
That is a vital sociolinguistic distinction. Broke is an informal, colloquial term, and crucially, it almost always implies a temporary state of lacking liquid cash.
Temporary. Okay.
A college student might say, I can't go out for pizza tonight, I'm totally broke. They have zero cash in their wallet at that specific moment.
Yeah.
But it does not necessarily mean they are living in a state of systemic generational poverty.
So what does wealthy mean then?
Wealthy implies the exact opposite. Someone who wins the lottery on a Tuesday might suddenly be rich. They have cash. But wealthy implies a formal long-term accumulation of assets, property, investments, and generational stability. It's an established status, not a sudden windfall.
That leads directly into how we evaluate pricing in consumer goods.
Yeah.
Very expensive becomes costly or pricey. Very cheap becomes inexpensive.
Right.
I want to highlight something massive here about the word cheap versus inexpensive because I see people get this wrong all the time and it causes incredible awkwardness.
Yep.
If I buy you a gift and you ask me about it and I say, oh, don't worry, it was very cheap, I have just accidentally insulted my own gift.
It is one of the most common pragmatics failures for English learners. They use cheap because it's the literal dictionary translation for low cost.
Right, they just look it up.
But what the dictionary doesn't tell you is the cultural baggage of consumerism attached to the word. In Western culture, calling a product cheap implies that the manufacturer cut corners. It implies the item is poorly made, easily broken, and lacks intrinsic value. It's an insult to the object's integrity.
Exactly. If I call a car cheap, I am saying the brakes are going to fail. But if I call it inexpensive, what am I saying?
Inexpensive is a compliment to the object's value proposition. It means the item didn't cost a massive amount of money, but it still functions perfectly well and retains its dignity.
It's a much safer word.
It's a neutral, safe, and precise word. If you're discussing budget options at a business meeting, you never suggest a cheap solution. You suggest an inexpensive or cost-effective alternative.
Now, what about pricey?
Pricey is a fantastic, slightly informal alternative to expensive. It softens the blow. The restaurant downtown is a bit pricey, but the ambiance is stunning.
So we've covered the objects we own and the spaces we inhabit. But as we move toward the final categories, we need to shift our lens outward to the broader environments, atmospheres, and abstract concepts that govern our daily lives.
We are moving from the tangible to the atmospheric. Let's look at environmental descriptions. Very loud becomes deafening. Very quiet becomes silent. very crowded becomes packed.
I want to focus on packed because, again, it is so deeply visual.
It really is.
When someone says a room is very crowded, I just picture a room with a lot of people in it. Maybe there are no chairs left.
Yeah.
But when someone says a concert venue was packed, my brain instantly jumps to the imagery of sardines in a tin can.
Yes, sardines in a tin.
You are packed in. There is zero negative space. You cannot swing your arms without hitting a stranger.
Packed evokes the physical pressure of the environment. It implies that the container, the room, the train, the stadium has reached its absolute physical limit. You're part of a mass.
And what about deafening and silent?
Similarly, deafening and silent operate at the extreme edges of human perception. Silent does not mean quiet. It means the complete absence of sound waves.
Right, absolute zero.
Deafening literally means the sheer volume of the noise is so overpowering, it is temporarily destroying your ability to hear.
Let's transition from atmospheric pressure to conceptual ideas. How we evaluate media, intelligence, and risk. Very funny becomes hilarious. Very boring becomes dull. Very interesting becomes fascinating. Let's contrast dull and fascinating. I love the imagery of the word dull.
What comes to mind when you hear it?
I instantly think of a dull chef's knife, a blade that hasn't been sharpened in years.
Oh, that's good.
When you try to chop a tomato with a dull knife, it doesn't slice cleanly. It just sort of mashes the food. It takes immense effort and yields a terrible result. A dull movie or a dull university lecture operates exactly the same way. It doesn't have the sharp edge required to cut through your baseline boredom. It doesn't penetrate your mind. It just mashes against your attention span until you fall asleep.
That is a profoundly accurate metaphor. It lacks the edge to catch your intellect. In complete contrast, fascinating comes from a Latin root meaning to bewitch or to cast a spell over.
Wow, to cast a spell.
Yeah, if a documentary is fascinating, you cannot look away. Your attention has been captured entirely by an outside force.
Now let's look at how we judge intelligence and human behavior. Very smart becomes brilliant. Very stupid becomes foolish. I want to park here for a second because the distinction between stupid and foolish is, I believe, one of the most important interpersonal communication tools a person can learn.
I completely agree.
I argue that foolish is about making a terrible choice, a lapse in judgment in a specific moment. A brilliantly smart person can do something incredibly foolish.
This touches on the philosophy of how we judge actions versus how we judge innate human value. Calling someone stupid is a direct attack on their permanent intellectual capacity. It implies they are biologically incapable of understanding. It's a dead-end insult.
Oh, it's just mean.
Calling an action foolish, however, is a critique of the decision-making process in that isolated instance. It was foolish of the CEO to invest all the company's capital in one risky venture. It acknowledges that the person should have known better.
Which is much more professional.
It's a much more precise and frankly more sophisticated way to critique catastrophic behavior without resorting to ad hominem attacks.
And you just naturally used another one of our target words, risky. Because very dangerous becomes risky or hazardous. What is the conceptual difference there?
Hazardous is typically physical and environmental. Hazardous chemical waste, hazardous road conditions due to ice. It implies an objective external threat to human health or physical safety.
And risky.
Risky implies a gamble. It requires a human agent making a choice where the outcome is uncertain and there is a high chance of failure or loss. Skydiving is risky.
Yeah.
A corporate merger is risky. An active volcano is hazardous.
Let's round out the concept list.
Yeah.
Very strange becomes bizarre. Very common becomes widespread. Very rare becomes uncommon or unusual. And very sure becomes certain. Let's look at widespread and uncommon. If I turn on the television to a major news network right now, I guarantee I will hear these two words within 5 minutes.
You will, because they are the absolute staples of journalistic, academic, and formal reporting. They communicate scale objectively.
Right.
Widespread physically describes the mechanics of a phenomenon spreading widely across geography or demographics.
Right.
There was a widespread power outage across the coast, or there's widespread support for the new policy. It removes the emotion and focuses on the physical reach.
And uncommon.
Uncommon is a gentle, highly objective way to say very rare, without sounding sensational or panicked. A doctor won't say a side effect is incredibly rare and bizarre. They will say it's uncommon, which maintains a calm, analytical tone.
So we have built this massive new vocabulary palette. We have massive, sluggish, freezing, exhausted, straightforward, gorgeous, wealthy, packed, fascinating, and widespread. It's an incredible arsenal.
It really is.
But here is the reality check. Knowing these words, having them written down in a notebook is only 50% of the battle.
It is. The other 50%, the part that actually makes you sound fluent, is the physical mechanics of how these words leave your mouth. It's the art of delivery, prosody, and tone.
If you take a strong, vibrant adjective like hilarious, but you deliver it with the flat, gray, monotonous energy of the word very, you completely defeat the purpose of using the word. The canvas remains gray.
Strong adjectives require strong vocal architecture. Tone carries as much semantic meaning as the actual letters on the page.
Give me an example of that.
Let's look at prosody, the patterns of rhythm and sound in speech. If you say the word hilarious, you cannot say it with a flat, bored voice. If you look at the floor, drop your shoulders and say, wow, that was hilarious, native speakers will immediately assume you're being sarcastic.
Right. They'll think you hated it.
To deploy the word correctly, your vocal pitch must rise. Your eyebrows naturally lift. You have to put physical breath support and energy into the hill syllable. Hilarious.
And it works in reverse for the heavy negative words. If I'm talking about the word exhausted or dreadful or miserable, my voice needs to match the gravitational weight of the concept.
Exactly.
I shouldn't say exhausted with a high, bouncy pitch. My voice needs to sound heavy. The pitch should drop naturally at the end of the sentence. I need to let the air out of my lungs, maybe sigh slightly. I am completely exhausted.
You are aligning your physiology with your vocabulary. When actors are trained in vocal delivery, they are taught to physically feel the shape of the word. Spotless should be delivered crisply. The P and a T should pop cleanly off the lips and teeth to mimic the sharp, clean nature of a spotless room.
Oh, that's really cool.
Sluggish should literally slow down your speaking cadence. You drag the vowels out.
Let's analyze how this works in a high-stakes environment. Imagine a CEO addressing a company during a crisis. If they stand at the podium and say, we have a very big problem and the solution is going to be very hard, they inspire zero confidence.
Not at all.
The vocal delivery will naturally be weak because the words are weak. But if they stand up, plant their feet, drop their pitch to project authority, and say, we are facing a massive challenge, but the path forward is straightforward, the entire energy of the room shifts.
The delivery of massive commands attention, and the crisp, clean delivery of straightforward inspires immediate calm.
It's so powerful.
That is the ultimate goal of moving from a B2 to a C1 fluency level. It's not just about passing a vocabulary test on paper. It's about integrating the vocabulary into your muscle memory so that your breath, your pitch, and your tone naturally support the psychological weight of the words you choose. You have to train the muscles in your jaw and your diaphragm just as much as you train your brain.
As we transition into our final recap, we really want to synthesize everything we've discussed. We've covered dozens of concepts, etymologies, and words. If you take away absolutely nothing else from this deep dive, let's give you the absolute heavy hitters, the most universally applicable, transformative replacements you can start using today.
If you want immediate results, focus on these 6 words. Number 1, crucial. Replace very important with crucial. It taps into the idea of the crosswords and instantly makes you sound more authoritative in serious and professional settings.
Love that one. What's number 2?
Number 2, exhausted. Replace very tired. Remember the imagery of an engine with no fuel or a phone with a dead battery. It communicates a total systemic shutdown. Number 3, packed. Replace very crowded. It moves beyond just a head count and invokes the physical claustrophobic pressure of a room with no empty space.
Like sardines. Number 4.
Number 4, hilarious. Ditch, very funny, but remember to add the vocal energy and the rising pitch to avoid sounding sarcastic.
Number 5.
Number 5, straightforward. Avoid the condescending trap of calling a colleague's work simple and embrace the elegance and clarity of straightforward.
And the last one.
Number 6,
Starving.
starving. A fantastic dramatic hyperbole to replace very hungry, but best reserved for when you are among friends and family, not the boardroom.
Those 6 words alone, delivered with the right tone, will absolutely transform the texture of your daily conversations. But we aren't just going to give you a list and let you passively walk away. Our expert actually has a specific, actionable assignment for you.
I do. The biggest mistake language learners make is trying to memorize a list of 40 words in one day. That is scientifically counterproductive and leads to overwhelm.
So what's the homework?
Here is your actionable homework. Choose just 10 of the new words we discussed today. 10 words that resonated with your specific daily life. Write them down with a pen on a physical sticky note. Place that note somewhere you look every day. The edge of your computer monitor, your bathroom mirror, or the dashboard of your car.
Okay, then what?
Your active mission is to force yourself to use those 10 specific words in your own spoken or written English sentences this week.
Write an email to your team and find an organic way to use straightforward. Call a friend, tell them a story about your week, and find an excuse to use bizarre or sluggish.
Exactly. It might feel a bit clunky the first time, but force it until the muscle memory takes over and it feels entirely natural.
Because knowledge is entirely theoretical until it's actively applied in the real world.
That is a fact.
And as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with a final, slightly philosophical thought to ponder over the next few days. We've spent this entire time dissecting how to change the words you use to describe the physical and emotional world around you. But here's the provocative question. Does acquiring a more precise vocabulary actually change the way you experience reality?
You are referencing the theory of linguistic relativity,
Yeah.
often associated with the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis.
Yes.
It's one of the most debated and fascinating concepts in cognitive science.
Exactly. The idea that the limits of your language are the limits of your world. Think about it. If you walk through life labeling every single positive thing as just very good, your brain only has one bucket to drop those experiences into.
Right.
But if you actively force your brain to pause and distinguish between what is genuinely outstanding, what is visually stunning, and what is merely effortless, does your brain actually begin to perceive the world with sharper, more vibrant clarity?
That's a great question.
If you have more colors on your palette, do you physically start noticing more colors in the sunset? I firmly believe you do. Upgrading your vocabulary isn't just about sounding smarter in a meeting. It's about upgrading the resolution of your own lived reality.
It's a profound thought to end on. You're literally building a richer, more nuanced internal world by expanding the tools you have to categorize it.
So throw away that flat gray brush. Grab those bright, vivid colors and start painting. Thank you so much for sitting at the table with us today. Keep practicing, keep analyzing the language you hear, and until next time, keep looking for the nuance in the world around you. Have a fantastic week.